Hello everyone. Before we dive into tonight's accounts, I have a small request. If you find yourself looking over your shoulder or feeling that chill down your spine while listening, please hit the like button and subscribe. It's the best way to support the channel and ensures that these stories keep coming your way. I also want to hear from you. Drop a comment letting me know where in the world you're watching from and exactly what time it is for you. For 6 years, I worked as a ranger in the Chattahoochee National Forest in northern Georgia. The northern Georgia backcountry is not what most people picture when they think of Georgia. It's rugged, genuinely rugged, with ridge sections that drop away sharply on both sides and creek drainages that can swallow a trail completely after heavy rain. The backcountry zones don't get the foot traffic that the popular sections do, which means when something goes wrong out there, it tends to go wrong quietly, and it tends to stay that way until someone goes in to find it. Night calls were part of the job. You geared up, and you went and you handled whatever was on the other end of it. Most of the time, it was exactly what it sounded like. A hiker who'd pushed too far, a campsite medical situation, someone who'd lost the trail and panicked. Manageable things that resolved. The call came in at just past 3 in the morning. Camper in distress. The reported location was in a backcountry zone that would take us roughly 45 minutes to reach on foot, through a section of trail that ran along a ridge before dropping into a creek drainage that was rocky and uneven and demanded attention even in daylight. My partner that night was about 7 months into the job. Newer hire, hadn't done many overnight calls yet, but he was steady, didn't rattle. We signed out and started moving. The first half hour went normally, headlamps running, moving at a pace that covered ground without being reckless, the trail familiar enough under my feet that I could focus on the environment around us, rather than just the path ahead. The forest at 3 in the morning in that section of the Chattahoochee has a weight to it that's hard to describe. Not threatening exactly, just present in a way that daylight doesn't produce. Every sound carries differently. Every shadow sits differently. You stay aware. About 30 minutes in, without anything specific triggering it, something shifted in my gut. Not a sound, not a sight, just that low internal alarm that experienced field workers learn not to dismiss. Something my body had registered before my brain caught up with it. I kept moving and kept it noted and stayed sharp. We were maybe 10 minutes from the reported location when we heard it. A baby crying. Ahead of us on the trail, carried through the trees from somewhere up the drainage. Clear and immediate. My body responded before I'd finished processing it. I picked up the pace and my partner matched me, and we both started calling out, announcing ourselves, moving toward the sound. Everything in my training said, move fast, make noise, let the person know help is coming. I was maybe 30 seconds into that faster pace when something stopped me. I put my arm out and grabbed my partner, and we both went still on the trail. Just listen, I said. We stood there in complete darkness with our headlamps the only light in any direction and listened to what was coming from ahead of us. The cry ran its sequence, then it ran it again, identical, same pitch, same duration, same rise and fall at exactly the same points. Then again, same thing, over and over with a consistency and a precision that sat completely wrong in my chest. A real child crying doesn't do that. It shifts constantly. The pitch moves, the rhythm breaks, the breathing interrupts it, exhaustion changes it. What we were hearing didn't shift. It didn't breathe. It didn't change at all. It just ran the same sequence and reset and ran it again, clean and identical every single time, like an audio file set to repeat. I looked at my partner. His face in the headlamp told me everything. He'd heard it too, and he was landing in the same place I was. "That's a recording," I said. Same sound, playing over and over. He didn't say anything. He just stood there listening to it cycle through again, and I watched his expression settle into something that wasn't confusion anymore. We stood on that trail for a while longer, long enough to be completely certain we were both hearing it the same way. The sound kept going. Same sequence, same reset point, same timing. Whatever was producing it ahead of us in the dark was not a child. We turned around. I'm not going to dress that decision up or make it sound more procedural than it was. We were two rangers on foot in a remote drainage at 3 a.m, with no backup within reasonable distance. And something ahead of us was playing a recorded infant cry on a loop from a position we couldn't see into. We had no visual on the source, no way to assess what was between us and it, and nothing about the situation was behaving the way a genuine distress call behaves. We moved back fast, not running. The terrain on that section of trail punishes running at night, but moving hard and deliberate, headlamps sweeping, neither of us talking much. We got back to the station, and I filed a full report immediately. A team went out at first light to check the reported location. They found a campsite, not an improvised one, an established site, cleared ground, a fire ring built properly with stacked stones, the kind of setup that takes time and intention. Empty. No gear, no person, no equipment of any kind that could have generated sound. The surrounding area was searched and came back with nothing useful. The original call was traced through dispatch. The number it came from didn't match any registered permit holder or documented visitor for that zone on that date. No record of that number in any system we had access to. The report went in as unresolved, and that was the last official word on it. My partner put in for a transfer to a different district about a year later. We stayed in contact for a while, and he never brought that night up in any of our conversations. Then out of nowhere, close to 2 years after it happened, he sent me a message. Short. It just said, "I still can't get past the timing of that call. Just after 3 a.m, 45 minutes of bad terrain in the dark. Someone worked that out in advance." I wrote back and told him I'd been sitting with the same thing since the night it happened. He didn't respond to that message. The campsite is what keeps coming back when I go over it. Someone had been out there and built that site properly, not thrown together, actually built. And on the night a distress call went out from those coordinates, the site was empty, the caller didn't exist, and a recording was running on a loop from somewhere in those trees designed to sound like a child who needed help immediately. Designed to make 2 rangers stop thinking and start running toward it in the dark. We were 10 minutes out when we stopped. 11 years with the National Park Service will change the way you see wilderness. Not in a bad way necessarily. You just stop seeing it the way a visitor sees it. Visitors see the postcard version, the views, the wildlife, the trails. Rangers see the infrastructure behind all of that, the maintenance, the patterns, the things that don't make it into the brochure. After enough years, you develop a working understanding of what the land does and doesn't do, what explains itself and what doesn't, and you get comfortable sitting with the ones that don't, because there are always a few of those, and fighting them is a waste of energy. This was during my 3rd year, stationed at a park in the Blue Ridge section of North Carolina. Late August, night shift, somewhere around 9 in the evening. The weather was about as good as a North Carolina mountain night gets. Warm, clear, full moon sitting high enough to throw actual shadows on the trail. I was on the Eastern Loop, which I'd done enough times that my feet knew it without me thinking about it. 30 minutes in, moving at an easy pace, everything completely normal. Then I felt something hit my shoulder. One drop. I looked up out of reflex and saw nothing. Clear canopy, moonlight, the usual. My immediate assumption was an animal somewhere in the branches above me. It happens. You're moving through a forest at night, and something up in the canopy loses its grip on its dinner, or just has bad timing. Nothing about that assumption bothered me. I wiped it off without breaking stride. Then I felt the texture on my fingers. Sticky, not the thin, clean wet of water. Something thicker, with weight to it, that didn't dry the way water dries. I stopped and brought my flashlight up. Blood. Fresh. Still tacky enough to stretch slightly when I pressed my fingers together. I pointed the beam straight up. It took me a few seconds to understand what I was looking at, and I want to be clear that the beam reached it fine. It wasn't a visibility problem. It was a comprehension problem. About 100 feet up, in a mature white oak, lodged into the fork where the main trunk split, was a deer. A buck, based on the size of it. The carcass was destroyed. I've seen predator kills. I've seen animals hit by vehicles. I've seen things that have been out in the elements for weeks. This was different from all of those. The body had been torn in a way that I kept searching for a word to describe and kept coming up short. Mangled is the closest I can get. Not fed on. Mangled. Like force had been applied without any particular goal beyond the application of force. I stood under that tree for a long time. The oak was old, and the trunk was straight and bare for at least the first 20 feet off the ground. No low branches, nothing to grab onto, nothing that would give an animal easy access from the ground up. The fork where the carcass was sitting was 100 feet up. I went back the next morning specifically to look at it again in daylight with a clearer head, and I brought a measuring tape and the numbers held. The lowest branch was well above standing height. The fork was as high as I'd thought. I put in a cougar in my initial thinking. It was the first thing that made any structural sense. Big cats cache their kills. They're capable climbers. They operate at night. But I kept running into the same wall. Cougars cache in accessible locations. Low branches, dense brush, places they can return to easily. 100 feet up, a branchless trunk isn't a cache. It doesn't serve any behavioral purpose I could identify. And beyond the behavior question, there was the simpler problem. There were no cougars in that park. The wildlife documentation for that area was detailed and current. No big cat had been recorded in that region, and the surrounding state records backed that up completely. I filed a thorough report. The service sent an assessor out within a few days. The official finding, as it was eventually communicated back to me, was that the carcass had likely been placed by an unidentified large predator, and that the height referenced in my initial report was probably affected by nighttime estimation conditions. I've been a ranger for 11 years. My nighttime estimation conditions were fine. The carcass was gone before anyone made it back for a second look. Not decomposed, gone. No remains on the ground beneath the tree. No evidence of it having fallen and been scavenged. No trace of it anywhere in the surrounding area. Just the fork. Empty. bark clean. I kept that patrol route for another 2 years after it happened. I walked under that tree probably 200 more times. I always put the beam up into the fork when I passed it. It was always empty. But here is the part that I haven't been able to put down, and I'll say it plainly, because there's no way to dress it up that makes it land any differently. The blood hit my shoulder from directly above. Not at an angle, not running down the bark, not dripping off a branch that extended over the trail. Directly down, vertical, like something positioned above the exact point on the trail where I was walking at that moment. I hadn't heard anything in the canopy before it hit. The night was still. No rustling, no movement, no sound of weight shifting in the branches above me. Complete quiet right up until the drop landed on my shoulder. There are two ways to read that. Either whatever was up there was already still before I came down the trail, meaning it had been there for a while, not disturbed by my approach, not reacting to my presence, or it heard me coming and went still deliberately. I don't know which of those is more unsettling. I've gone back and forth on it, and I haven't landed anywhere comfortable. The park is still there. The Eastern Loop is still a patrol route. I don't work that station anymore, but I know the rangers who do, and I've never told any of them this story because there's nothing actionable in it, and it wouldn't do them any good to know. What they don't know, they can't think about at 9 in the evening, 30 minutes into a shift on a clear August night when the moon is full and the trail is quiet and something moves in the canopy above them. I still think about that fork, 100 feet up in a straight-trunked white oak on a clear night with no wind and no sound. And whatever put a full-grown deer up there went to the trouble of being quiet about it. I spent 9 years with the Park Service before I moved into a different role. 9 years of backcountry patrols, overnight assignments, remote facilities, wildlife incidents, search and rescue calls at 2 in the morning in terrain that had no interest in making things easy. By the end of it, I had accumulated the kind of comfort with dark and isolated places that most people spend their whole lives avoiding. Empty buildings didn't bother me. Strange sounds in the middle of the night didn't bother me. Being the only person on a property after dark didn't bother me. That comfort was real. It was earned. And something at a posting in the Ozark National Forest in western Arkansas spent an entire season quietly taking it apart. I was assigned to a secondary operations facility on the western edge of the forest, not the main visitor center, a smaller satellite hub used mostly for administrative overflow and as a staging area for backcountry crews. The property had a main building with offices and a small fitness room, 2 bunkhouses for rotating field staff, a storage barn, and attached to the side of one of the bunkhouses, an unfinished outbuilding. More shed than anything else, lumber framing mostly done, but the exterior unfinished, used for storing equipment that didn't need full weather protection. During the off-season, the facility ran on a skeleton crew. At the lowest point, it was just me and 2 other full-time staff. We lived in quarters attached to the main building and operated the facility through the quieter months while rotating crews came and went during the week on assignment. On weekends, the bunkhouses were empty. The property was ours. 3 people on several acres of buildings in the middle of the Ozark backcountry, with the nearest town a significant drive away. I had a routine. After my evening shift, I'd walk over to the main building to use the fitness room, do my workout, and then make a final round of the property before turning in, checking that doors were secured, lights were off, everything buttoned up for the night. Standard end-of-day stuff. I'd been doing it since the first week, and it had become automatic. The outbuilding attached to the bunkhouse had an exterior overhead light mounted above the entrance. The switch that controlled it was inside the outbuilding itself, behind a door that stayed padlocked. My routine included turning that light off on my evening rounds. I turned it off the first night, came back in the morning, and it was on. I turned it off the second night. On again in the morning. I went through every logical possibility. Timer. There was no timer on that circuit. I checked the breaker panel myself. Someone else turning it on. The padlock on the outbuilding door had 2 keys, both accounted for, and my 2 colleagues had no reason to be going in there after hours. Electrical fault causing it to reset. I had the wiring checked and nothing came back. Whatever was turning that light on was doing it from inside a locked outbuilding with 2 key holders, neither of whom were doing it. This went on for weeks. Off every night, on every morning, without fail and without explanation. I want to be straight about something. That light on its own was strange, but it was manageable. Strange things happen in old facilities. Electrical systems develop personalities. I filed it and moved on and kept turning the light off every night. What wasn't manageable was what started happening to me on the walk between my quarters and the main building. It's maybe 200 feet. A flat open path between 2 buildings on a property I knew completely. I had walked it hundreds of times in the dark without a second thought. Somewhere around the 3rd week of that posting, I started not wanting to walk it. Not a specific fear. Nothing I could point to. Just a deep reluctance that sat in my chest every time I stepped out of my quarters door after dark. An awareness of the space around me that felt less like environmental alertness and more like something alerting me to something specific that I couldn't see. Every single night, I had to actively override the urge to run the last section to the main building door. I didn't run. I'm not someone who runs from a feeling with no object, but I wanted to, every time. And that wanting was completely new and completely inconsistent with 9 years of being at home in the dark. The rotating staff started coming through maybe a month in. Backcountry crews on weekday assignments, staying in the bunkhouses overnight before heading out the next morning. They didn't know each other, came from different districts, had no shared history with the property. Within the first few weeks, 3 separate staff members mentioned hearing things at night. Not to me directly, to each other, in the way people mention things they find strange, but don't want to make a big deal of. I only heard about it because one of my full-time colleagues mentioned it in passing. Bumps, she said. Odd sounds. A couple of them asked if the building had a rodent problem. I didn't say what I thought. A rodent problem is a good explanation, and I wasn't going to take it away from anyone who found it useful. The light kept coming on every morning for the rest of the posting. Right up until the last day I was stationed there, I turned it off every night and found it on every morning, and never once found a satisfying answer for it. My 2 colleagues didn't seem particularly affected by the property beyond the general low-grade strangeness of an isolated off-season posting. Maybe it didn't bother them. Maybe they were better at compartmentalizing it. Or maybe whatever was present there had a specific quality that landed differently depending on the person. What I know is that I have worked in genuinely remote locations in the dark for a long time. Backcountry at 2 in the morning, miles from any road, alone. None of that ever produced what that 200-foot walk produced in me every single night for months. A path I could see completely. A distance I could cover in 30 seconds. Buildings I knew every inch of on both sides. And every night the same thing. A pull in my chest that said, don't walk slowly, and don't look at the outbuilding, and don't stop until you're through the door. I always looked at the outbuilding. The light was always off when I passed it. It was always on in the morning.